Hello, I'm James Gordy. This is my podcast that you're listening to right now. I'm really just like anyone else. Grew up in New Orleans, went to LSU, got a college degree. For me, that was civil engineering. And I moved to Houston 3 days after I graduated in May of 2015. Found a roommate on Craigslist and was ready to get started with my career. After I got settled, I was looking to convert all my energy into, something to try and build a network. If that's what you're supposed to do. That's the grown-up thing to do. You're supposed to transition from college and start your network and be a grown-up. So I found some organizations, I found some podcasts, I met some great people here, and eventually I began producing that podcast, and I joined and became a co-founder of the API Young Professionals. After a while of, being and producing that podcast, I decided, hey, I got an idea. Why don't I start my own? That idea is what you're hearing here today. And this is, there's nothing special about me. I'm just like you. I just went out on a limb and started doing it. So this is just going to be the show. It's called the Oil and Gas Young Professionals Podcast. And that's the name for now. That might, we might decide that that's lame or that's a dumb name and we'll change it. But that's the working title for now. And I'm talking to you here now from my apartment in Houston. My roommate's taking a nap on the couch. And because we're rained in today, this is the big April storms, and you'll know what I'm talking about when you hear this. So instead of just sitting around, I decided to put up the final touches here and just talk to you. So this is going to be the show. We're going to start off just interviewing people, young professionals and more established industry guys and gals. We don't discriminate. We'll take anyone on the show. We just want to have some good conversations. And we're just going to get their story and talk to them as people. And we're going to learn about some industry topics together. And, this is kind of just the show. I want to engage with y'all and get your feedback and anything like that to try and make the show that we want. I'm going to be, adding some features, taking away some things, anything like that. But really, I just wanted to talk to you and say, here I am. And I'm just any other standard post-grad that's working in oil and gas, recording to you here in my apartment here in the middle of Houston. So this is going to be the show. The first person who was kind enough to talk to us, his name's Moji Karimi. He is from Iran, but, he went to ULL and got his graduate degree, University of Louisiana Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns. And then he moved to Houston and started working, and then he eventually wound up at Weatherford. And now he's working at a startup, and they're doing some really cool things. They've got nanotechnology, and they're profiling the organisms in the ground. And, we'll hear more about that as he talks. So here's the show. Thanks. Welcome to the Oil and Gas Young Professionals Podcast.
Thanks for having me, James.
So we're here in Houston, and it's April now, and we've enjoyed this really mild El Nino winter. And it really didn't get cold at all. And our friends that are probably listening in the north or wherever they might be, as they eventually find this show, they're probably very jealous of the weather we have here, but we're about to pay the price because here comes the heat, and we won't be able to breathe when we go outside until October.
Yep. I tell you, these past 2-3 days has been the best so far this year, and I hope we'll get more of it, but probably will start getting hot pretty soon.
Yeah, we're ready for it. Okay, so you're from Iran, but how did you get in oil and gas, and how do you find yourself here in Houston
now? That's a long story, but the short version is I grew up in Iran, and where oil and gas is one of the main resources. So you always see, just growing up, being a kid, you see on the news the oil minister making things happen, and just about how the economy is relying just upon oil and gas. And after high school, and that's where you have to choose really what major you want to take in Iran. And I kind of knew I wanted to be an engineer, but I really didn't want to be an electrical engineer or a mechanical engineer or a chemical engineer. So then I came across petroleum.
Were you between petroleum and anything else, or was it just straight petroleum?
No, that was it.
Okay.
And I mean, once I made that choice back in Iran, you actually have to choose what discipline of petroleum engineering you want to go to from bachelor's. So it's exploration, drilling, production, and reservoir, and HSE. You have to make that choice before going to college. So did a little research. I asked a lot of people who work at different sectors, and turned out they told me that drilling engineering actually is more interesting. It's more dynamic. Things are happening in real time, and by the way, you make more money. So that was it for me, and I chose drilling engineering, and went to school at the University of Petroleum Technology.
Hey, I mean, no pressure. You just got to make a decision, and that's where you go for the rest of your life.
That is true, and I guess I was one of the lucky ones. What I chose to go to college for actually did turn out to be what I ended up enjoying.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for that.
No, that's awesome. I mean, out here making holes and just figuring it out as we go.
Yep.
Okay, so growing up around, you had to choose, and for your undergraduate, your bachelor's, you did petroleum drilling engineering, correct?
Yep.
And then what came after that?
So just getting close to graduation, it was when I started to thinking beyond what the education system had to offer there, and I started, kind of doing my own research on what can I do for graduate studies.
Were you getting on Reddit to do this, or where did you figure out what you were trying to do?
Just speaking with people who've gone to different universities. I remember just going looking at the rankings of universities, and then it kind of became clear that United States had more to offer in terms of diversity of schools and richness of the petroleum engineering programs. And at the time, I mean, to tell you the truth, I had no idea. If you tell me Montana versus Louisiana versus Texas, all I knew was just from movies and things. But I would look for what states seem to be, they have more opportunities in terms of industry collaboration, they have better professors, and they have research programs that is more in line with what I was doing at the time, which was drilling technology.
Yeah.
And while doing that, I came across University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and one of the professors there was, having some really interesting research, and I reached out, and they ended up offering me a scholarship, and I kind of stopped there. I didn't apply to any other school. Once I got the Raging Cajuns, scholarship, that was it. So that's how I ended up in the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and that was December of 2008 when I moved to the United States.
Okay, so I may be somewhat biased, but I'm also Louisiana, born and raised from New Orleans, and I have to say you made an excellent choice. So you're the Iranian Raging Cajun. What did you think of South Louisiana?
I had a great time there. I really love Lafayette. Actually, I guess 2 weeks ago, I was reading in the news that Lafayette was chosen as the city with the happiest people. And the picture that was going with that was a bunch of people just dancing, with the Cajun music and having crawfish. And I got to experience that. Very nice people. Really enjoyed my time. And I think it's in particular a really good city to go to school, because that's when you want to have some focus for your school, but you also want to have some fun while you're there. On the same token, you don't want to go to school in Las Vegas, but Lafayette had kind of it was a great experience culturally, and also a great place to come to the United States.
Yeah, Louisiana really, it's the U.S., but it's almost like another country when you go there.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, we're definitely all about the work-life balance, and you probably have to watch yourself on the scale. Maybe get a little heavy on the party side sometimes over there. But people in Louisiana definitely, especially in Lafayette, they like to have a great time.
Yeah. The only thing that I have, if I was to blame Lafayette or Louisiana for one thing, it's my accent, which I'm still trying to work on. It's like you could imagine Iranian mixed with Louisiana. It's not near perfect English.
Yeah, certainly. I was thinking I heard some sort of Cajun in there, but I didn't want to call you out on it, and you brought it up though.
Yep.
So you get the Iranian accent, Cajun, and now some Texan.
There you go.
What
Cajun,
came after
Persian?
Cajun, Persian, exactly. So what came after UL?
So while I was at UL, which was actually just 3 semesters, when I wanted to look at my thesis, because we had to do a thesis program at the graduate school, I wanted to do my thesis on a drilling technology that would have real applications in the industry. I didn't want to do some theoretical research in the lab or just modeling and with no applications. And I had an eye on getting a job through my thesis. So what I did was went to good old Google and typed in advanced drilling technologies, and I came across a bunch of things. Managed pressure drilling being one, solid expandable systems, casing wall drilling technology, and casing wall drilling was the one that kind of piqued my interest. So I did more research on it, and as I researched, I came across this name Tesco company again and again every time I search more, and so I looked into that. I was like, why this Tesco thing is so close to casing drilling? And turn out they are actually the inventors of casing drilling. And they have an office in Houston. At the time, they also had an office in Lafayette. So I reached out to them and basically said, I'm a student at University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and I'm really interested in your technology, and I would like to do my thesis on it. Why don't you give me some problems? What are the things you're dealing with right now in the industry? And I'll pick one. If I could, I'll solve it. And turned out that email ended up in the inbox of my good friend. I mean, he wasn't my friend at the time, but after Monty Montgomery, who also happened to be a raging Cajun from University of Louisiana, Lafayette. And he wrote me back with a very welcoming email and provided me with more information about technology. Long story short, I ended up in Houston, interviewed and things, and we brainstormed about some ideas, and they gave me a problem, and I solved that problem. But it only a part of it, and there was more left to do. So when I was graduating, they offered me a full-time position as a research engineer, and that's when I moved to Houston, and that was in 2010.
Okay, so you're in Houston. Well, what do you go from South Louisiana, and now you have the second place in the U.S. you're living. It's Houston, and as most people listening probably know, Houston is the epicenter, the center of the oil and gas universe per se. It's like working on Wall Street, for oil and gas.
That's true.
What do you think about Houston? Why Houston? Well, let's just talk about that a little bit.
Houston is such a friendly city to me now, but when I moved here, it was very intimidating.
Yeah.
Starting with the highways, moving from Lafayette to Houston, we used to have a little downtown where everything was there, but here downtown is really it has a different meaning than it's not a hanging out place after hours.
Yeah,
like
so
Lafayette was.
Where you're looking for the keg and all these bars, you couldn't find them over here.
Yeah, no keg in Houston. So when I moved to Houston, I immediately realized that the way to kind of establish yourself is to network and bond with the other colleagues in peers in the industry, and I did that through different associations, SP, IDC, ADE, and Tesco, my company at the time. They were very open to the idea of me exploring and kind of be the face of casing drilling in these communities, and that helped me in turn to get to know a lot of other people who are working in the industry, which a lot of them I'm still in touch with, and kind of get to know the dynamics of Houston. Now, to your question, why Houston? Well, first and foremost, if you're in any business, you have to be where your market is. You have to be where your customers are. And if you're oil and gas energy, that is going to be Houston. That said, Houston is a very cultural city. Cost of living is low. So even if you're an entrepreneur, it's a unique place to start your business. There's a lot of resources available, for if your business is in oil and gas, and I mean even if others too, medical or retail. But so far, I've had a great experience in Houston, and I think I'll continue to live here.
Yeah, I really can't stress enough. I graduated from LSU back in May, and I've been working here in Houston, I guess going on about 10 months now. And just the opportunities and the experiences you get to take up, and the people, you might interact with them on LinkedIn or Twitter or anything like that. I know, like, just because I live here in Houston, I've met and become, personal friends with people like Moji here and James Hahn and Mark LaCour of the Oil and Gas Podcast, and just the doors they can open up for you. It's really incredible, and it just kind of walking the halls with those people per se. It really opens your eyes, and everything's at your fingertips. Houston really is terrific, for your career and, after 5 as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. So after that, I'm looking down here at your, credentials on LinkedIn, because I have that all prepared as we were going to talk here. And I see that you've done a lot of work at Weatherford. Can you kind of tell
Mhm.
me about your Weatherford experience?
Sure. When I was at Tesco, and towards the end of my time there, I was doing research, and one of the things I realized quickly was I actually didn't enjoy it as much per se, and I like to learn more about why are we doing what we're doing, and what is the business model for this, who are the customers, what are we telling them, how we're presenting them this data. So I like to be involved more in application engineering, operations, product line management type of roles. And Weatherford was the company who offered me that opportunity. And Schlumberger came along and bought my division, Casey and Drilling, from Tesco, and that was when I moved to Weatherford. Um, and I started off as application engineer for site expandable systems, and I did that for a while. Then I moved back to drilling with casing, as Weatherford calls it.
Can we talk a little bit about how you said your company was acquired by Schlumberger, which of course is
Hmm.
the largest oil and gas upstream service company in the world. But how did you make that switch? Did you go about your old Raging Cajun working the connections route, or did you just cold call some people in emails via SPE? How did that happen?
That's a good question. Actually, I'm grateful for knowing the people at Weatherford just because of what I was doing prior with SPE, with ADE, with IADC. So, what happens when you are working, no matter what company you're at a very special topic, say casing drilling, or it could be at, I don't know, EOR or reservoir simulation using a certain method, you'll get to know people who do the same thing at different companies. And through me presenting at SP events and different, functions, I got to know who is the person for Julian McKayson and Weatherford, who is the person at Baker Hughes, at operating companies. And when the news of Tesco being acquired, the casing drilling division of Tesco being acquired by Schlumberger, the Weatherford friends that I had, they actually reached out to me and said, we know this deal is happening, so what is your plan? And I said no initially, and then a few other things happened, and I changed my mind. And, I was uncertain because we didn't know if this is going to be the best opportunity of the lifetime to join Schlumberger, or or not. So, um, but yeah, that's how I ended up at Weatherford.
Yeah, I mean, that really, people hear and you hear about joining professional organizations like API and SPE and just whatever is related to your segment
Hmm.
of the industry or your industry specifically. If you're not in oil and gas or energy, but I mean, this is you're hearing the story of a real life example about how if you get involved in these organizations, you meet people and people view you as valuable and they want to hire you as well because as big as the oil and gas industry is, it's not as big as you think in your particular segment. And you get to rub elbows a lot with the same sorts of people and you kind of learn everyone who does similar things to you.
Absolutely. And if I was to emphasize on one thing, when you do all this, associations and different things, it's all about paying it forward. You can't expect to see results immediately, um, but it's to build those connections, and it does take a lot of energy. But you never know when it's going to come back and help you out.
Exactly. That's just a good thing to have in your pocket. You join these organizations, you talk to people, network, meet with them, help them with whatever they're trying to do.
Hmm.
And eventually they'll really appreciate and you build up that equity with those people and they start to see you as a peer. And when you need something, you can call upon it and they'll actually help you. So everyone here listening, young professionals and the like, go out, find what organizations are, relevant to your particular job or company and where you fit into the industry and join those organizations and don't just join them halfway. Really do it intently and you can reap the benefits down the line when you actually need them, especially in this low crude price environment.
Exactly. And my experience with doing work at IDC and ADE, I was at the drilling fluids group at ADE. I was at work, the task work for updating the 12th edition of IDC drilling manual. And when I was doing these things at the table that I was sitting, everybody else had, you know, 20 plus 30 years of experience. And it's intimidating because oil and gas is very experience driven. It would take you a while to gain the confidence to sit at the table with, like you said, to to get people to see you as peers, not as somebody who is just joining and doesn't know much about the topic. But what I realized was once you prove yourself, once you kind of pass that first barrier, people start to actually respect you for what you know, and very we had very good collaborative work with different generations that are in the industry. So yeah, just my message, I guess, is don't be intimidated by how many years of experience you don't have, but focus on what you already know.
Exactly. If you don't ask and you don't reach out, you'll never know. So put yourself out there and just go for it. All right, so we got a little sidetracked, but you're working in Weatherford after your company got acquired, and also I know that you, just from speaking to you and trying to actually set up this interview, that you've done a lot of traveling with Weatherford as well. Can you kind of talk about that?
I don't know about a lot actually, but just inside the U.S. to different shale basins, and then Canada a few times. Um, with Weatherford, actually, my role was North America product line champion for drilling casing, and then later on product launch manager. But it was both focused on North America. When I was with Tesco, it was a global role. So I traveled to Oman. I will go to different countries to present at conferences, and I'll look at applications that was happening in Argentina, was happening in Malaysia. And that's actually really good because you get to know, because we're dealing with geology at the end of the day where we're drilling, and the rock just behaves very differently at different places, as you could imagine. So the more of that experience you could get, it's better. Though at first, intuitively you would want to focus on one area and learn more about it. But I think if you try to diversify, know more about more things, eventually that's more helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you worked with Weatherford for a while, and doing or not doing as much traveling as I might have thought you did. You had me fooled. So now you're currently at Biota. You want to just touch on that a little bit?
Sure. To tell you about Biota, I have to tell you about the last thing I was doing at Weatherford, which was kind of like a entrepreneur, or I could say entrepreneur in house. And what we're doing at Weatherford was we realized basically that we had some issues with commercializing technology after it was developed, because historically in oil and gas, what they do, we develop technology R&D and nobody knows about it, and then at OTC or something we reveal it, and then customers show up and they're like, oh, why is this 10,000 psi, why is this spelled this way, I don't know what's the use for that. And so to eliminate that, we have to learn from what others have done. And that's the kind of the lean startup methodology of getting customers involved very early on and try to make the thing work. And if it doesn't work, move on quickly to another idea. So in Weatherford, we try to implement that strategy. And they open these roles. It's called product launch manager. And what we'll do is we'll give us an idea kind of at the idea stage, and then you were in charge of making that happen and collaborating with sales, marketing, R&D, operations, and build the tool, test it in the field, and basically from idea all the way to full field commercialization. So I was doing that for managed pressure drilling. We had a choke system for land operations. And towards the end of last year, I came across Biota, and they had a really interesting technology. I've always been a fan of technologies to cross industries, and decided that it's time to take it to the next step and going from entrepreneur in house to entrepreneur at the startup. So I did make that shift, and from January I've been with them, I guess, for like 3 months now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, so your current role there, just clarify.
It's a business development manager for Biota, and in that capacity, kind of the face with the customers, and in doing so, define and refine applications, because we have a kind of a platform technology which is DNA sequencing, and then what does that enable, and what's the benefit of that. That takes a lot of conversations with clients to fine tune what problems can be solved and what problems are worth solving.
Okay, so we've kind of gone over most of your background. Could we get like a minute or 30 seconds on, you talked about the molecules and technology Biota is working with right now.
Mm-hmm.
What, at a very high level, for people like myself who maybe aren't super familiar with all the upstream terminology, what is biota doing?
Sure. Yeah, let's take a step back. So, biota, we're combining the advancements in DNA sequencing, right, from biotech and data science to understand and explore the Earth's subsurface. Turns out there are microbes in the subsurface that are alive, and then you could actually go in and get the DNA out, and it tells you things about what environment they have thrived and what reservoir properties they correlate to, for example. So the way we use DNA sequencing, we're applying this to the oil industry to maximize reservoir production. We do this through a variety of applications in unconventional reservoirs and in conventional reservoirs to basically answer operators' questions about where should I drill my wells, where should I place my frac stages, what layers am I producing from, and basically where is my oil coming from. And that's really actionable insight for your field development plan.
So, kind of using this technology, I know that people just kind of accept, and maybe forgive my ignorance here, but people talk about dry holes. Using these technologies, and speaking with y'all, would it be possible to just completely eliminate that from the process? A dry hole.
I could imagine that, though. I mean, if you're wildcatting, if you're just going somewhere that you have no information, that first well, you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
But this day and age, I mean, that doesn't happen as often with all the seismic technology, and I mean, we've already picked all the easy fruit, and we kind of have a good idea of where the reservoirs are. It's more about what we call high grading, which is basically where can I drill my best and my most productive wells, so that if I could drill a better well, I'll just focus on the good areas in the reservoir versus trying to cover everything. And biota helps with that.
Oh, wow. It's really high tech, interesting stuff. Okay, so moving on from that, we've talked about your background a little bit, what you're doing now and how to kind of get involved. What should millennials, the younger people, young professionals in the oil and gas, what should they be doing right now? A lot of people are probably jittery or worried about their jobs. If they have jobs, maybe they're,
Yeah.
college graduates and they're trying to get in, or, they're super sharp individuals, but, due to things outside of their control, they weren't able to, hold on to their job. If, you're in oil and gas, well, what are some things you think people should be doing to kind of stand out, or you kind of think outside the box and kind of, keep your career on the upward trajectory?
Great question. I would say the first thing, and one have to understand the nature of oil and gas business is experience driven, and that is not something that's going to go away anytime soon. So you will need to pay your dues. You need to go to the field. You need to spend the first few years just learning and absorbing all you can about how oil and gas works. How does a service company collaborate with the operator? What are the decision workflows? And these are most of the challenges that people who don't do that later on become entrepreneurs and they face those. So I would say just the first few years, try to learn as much as you can. Just be patient. It's going to be a little slow. Just be patient with it. And if you can, to your second point about standing out, try to find one niche area. It could be a technical area that you invest more heavily in, and somehow try to become a subject matter expert for one specific area. And that's also a good way to kind of get your name out in the industry and get to know other SMEs who you collaborate with at different functions and different industry events. And when the time comes that you want to make your next move, now you have a support system. You have you'll meet advisors, you'll meet mentors, you'll meet other like thinking friends that you make, so you could discuss ideas with them. And if you're the guy who had actually lost their job, and it's easy to be pessimistic about the situation as it's happening right now. I mean, I had three friends of mine actually call me today, and they've lost their job, and they were just kind of thinking, what now? I want to get out of oil and gas, and what should I do? Should I go back to the medical school? Should I do my MBA? It's very confusing. But at the same time, I think you should look at any threat also like an opportunity. So if you want to stay in oil and gas, there's a lot of opportunities. It's just more about being prepared and kind of seeing the next step, um, and moving towards that.
Yeah, and I want to elaborate on that. Talking, we spoke earlier about the opportunities that are available in Houston, but anyone who's listening here that is struggling with anything in their personal life about what should I be asking for from a mentor? How do I find a mentor? How do I get involved? Hey, this is my situation, and what should I do? I'm lost. There's no help for me out there. I go around recruiting for my company, and people just, I guess, they see me active on LinkedIn or Twitter or anything like that, and then they see that I'm working in oil and gas, and they're just looking for answers or maybe some help. And those are people in my direct network, such as Moji's in my direct network. But I want to say that if you're listening, reach out directly to me. And I'd like to tell people that I don't have any jobs for you. I don't have any direct tangible answers, but I can help arm you with the tools and maybe help you make some connections to get this thing rolling. And hey, the guy next to you who's trying to apply for that job, they're not listening to this and they're not reaching out to me. And just, like I said, I can't guarantee anything, but I'll do my best to give you the tools and make any connections in my power to help you. It's all about meeting people and helping everyone out in these hard times.
Sure. Most times it's not you, but you know someone who is in the same area. Going back to oil and gas, they say the level of separation between people is just 2 degrees. You always, if you're talking with somebody, you probably have some common friends.
Exactly. So hey, share the show, and maybe we can help out a bunch of oil and gas young professionals or people who desire to be working in oil and gas. So we kind of touched, and it's really unavoidable about all the challenges here, and oil being really cheap and all the struggles that that's creating. You're kind of working at a startup and sort of within the upstream sector of oil and gas. What sort of trends or opportunities are you seeing arise? Because every time there's one sort of ripple, there's going to be effects, and like you talked about, opportunities if you think outside the box, and things that you can do.
Yeah, and so every time that the industry had gone through a downturn, we come back with a bunch of really amazing technology, really disrupting the way that things were done, and we kind of exceed the way we were doing things before, because just out of necessity, if you want to still make money on a $40 oil, you have to come up with creative ways to cut cost, and those kind of they don't go away. When the price of oil does go up, we're still going to take advantage of those technologies that we develop today. So that's I think that the real opportunity here is, Warren Buffett has this saying that when the tide goes down, who was sleeping, who was swimming naked. So when the price of oil goes down, the inefficiencies show up, because before nobody cares. So then they have to be addressed, and we do address them during the downturn, and then when it comes up, we'll come back stronger.
Exactly. Obviously, oil and gas was a very attractive proposition to just literally anyone, because anyone can make money. With the black stuff, it's just magic. So lots of people got in, and they were, as Moji said, they were just operating inefficiently or maybe not the best way. But it's really now when we have, oil that is lower and it's cheaper and it's not $100 a barrel. Now is when it really takes a smart person to cut costs and look for the opportunities. So I mean, just by listening and kind of, you just gotta kind of take a step back and just creatively think about these things. And there are opportunities be had, but not just anyone can find them. It really takes a smart person who's really willing to outwork the next person and go out and get it. And I mean, right now, it's an opportunity to prove yourself, because out of necessity comes invention. And, here we are right now in 2016.
And cutting costs is just one aspect of it. The other one is how to get more oil out of a given reservoir. So, refer to it as recovery factor. What percentage of the original oil in place are you getting out, and what technologies what diagnostics are you implementing to know exactly where to drill, what stages are the best productive ones. So that's another area where we're seeing a lot of new technology coming in during the downturn, promising to increase the ultimate estimated recovery.
Sure. Okay. And then I've been kind of on LinkedIn and, from around people like yourself that are in the entrepreneur world, and the millennial generation has that mindset. Can you kind of just talk about, what it's like to be working at a startup, and, you're kind of doing that at Weatherford, and we touched on it lightly, but what does an oil and gas startup look like? Because, by the nature of oil and gas, there's probably a lot of money involved, and there's this resistance to change, and now we're bringing in technology. So, just, take us into the oil and gas entrepreneurial world.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, things happen a lot quicker. Decisions get made a lot faster. At a startup, we're a lot more agile, a lot more responsive to the requests of our clients. We're a lot more flexible. And in terms of, I would say, comparing to what I was doing at Weatherford and then at Tesco, as they're big companies, to what I'm doing now, it's just you got to wear a lot of hats when you're at startups, and that's not the roles kind of don't cover you anymore. So no matter what you're doing, because we're such a small team, and then competing with, Schlumberger's of the world and Halliburton's of the world, everybody has to do kind of everything depending on what's needed at that moment of time. So with that said, you never know what your day is going to be like when you wake up, because any moment something could happen, and you have to be able to be flexible and address that at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just, we're young, most of the people that are going to be listening to this. So it's a great opportunity to learn more and just, have just a very diverse, varied skill set. So, talking about this, some people might be curious, like I have an idea, or I want to get involved, or, maybe they're just frustrated at their day job and they feel like they can't make a difference. They're part of just such a big, they're just a cog in the machine, which I know a lot of young people kind of relate to. If someone is kind of curious about, the oil and gas entrepreneurial scene, or they want to maybe dip their toes in the water, how can they do so while also maintaining, the people that pay for their rent and their paycheck?
Mm-hmm. I would say the first thing that they could do is to think about ideas where they're working now. What would they do differently if that company was a startup? Would that change anything about the way they're doing things? Are there any opportunities to be more efficient or more agile or have better designs? So that would be the first step. But that is still it's just not going to be the same, and kind of when you're at a startup, failure is a very real option. But big companies, I mean, we've been on several projects where the fail, and then you just kind of move on to the next project. The other thing is to try to get involved with the community of startups, to just kind of observe and speak with them. How is it like? How does it work? And I'll tell you one thing: oil and gas is one of those industries that you would rarely find oil and gas entrepreneurs who have not worked at a big company. So by saying that, if you're listening right now and you're at a big company, there's no difference. Like anybody who's jumped to the startup side, they've gone through the same cycle and they've had the same thoughts that you might be having now. And they reached out, they spoke with the others who've been there, who've done that, and then kind of the path may sound very fuzzy, and you don't know how they find these companies and how they actually materialize, they actually make their ideas happen. But once you speak with enough people and do more research, it becomes clear. And I'll tell you, Houston is the right place for doing so.
Yeah, it's just another opportunity available here in Houston, Texas. If you're kind of on the fence, maybe you're from another part of the country or the world, and you've heard about traffic, and everything looks the same, and it's all boring, and it's really hot. There is traffic and it is hot, but there's a lot of opportunity here. So if you're on the fence, at least give it a shot. Houston's really a great place, and I've taken to it, more than I could ever imagine.
And the dynamics are changing very quickly too. In the example of that, I'm working out of it's like a co-working space now in Midtown, Houston called Station Houston. And the objective of the whole thing is to make Houston cool for entrepreneurs from everywhere to also think of Houston as an option to launch their company, as an option to operate their company, because it makes sense in so many ways. The cost of living is low. You still have access to a lot of kind of the tech hubs like Austin. And if you're in oil and gas, then I mean, it's a no brainer with your market being here.
Okay, so if people wanted to, learn more about the what you're doing at Biota, or Biota in general, or just the entrepreneurial scene, or if they just think you're a good guy and they want to reach out to you and maybe get some coffee or have a drink,
Sure.
how would you advise people to kind of reach out and connect with you or learn more about Biota?
Probably the easiest way would be LinkedIn. Just I don't have Facebook. I just just use
Sure.
LinkedIn. And then about Biota, they could just go to www.biota.com, which is a biota.com, and just check it out there.
Yeah, and for the post for the show, we'll have that in the notes and where all these links and how you can contact Moji. Again, hey, Moji Karimi, thank you thank you a lot for giving me your time and coming on and speaking to everyone out there. I really appreciate it, and we should do this again.
Thanks for having me. Sure.
Okay, and one last thing before we go, I'm going to ask that if you like the show, or maybe even if you didn't, go to the iTunes store and leave the show a review. You can also find that by going to jamesgordey.com/review. That's James, GORDEY.com/review. And what that'll do is it will help me boost up the iTunes rankings and it'll help more people find the show. Also, these shows are going to come out every Wednesday morning, just like it did today, at 7 a.m. Central Time. So you can expect that in your iTunes or wherever else we decide to put the show at 7 a.m. every Wednesday morning for your commute or your morning run or whatever else you might be doing on Wednesdays. Appreciate it, and see you all next week. That's going to be a cut. We were just talking about, people trying to, get in touch, get their finger on the pulse of the oil and gas entrepreneurial scene.